Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. This is Ken Walker with Photoshop for Digital Photography.com. I am so sorry that this has been so long, but to be honest, I have been stinking busy. And I can't hardly, I don't have hardly time to breathe. I'm literally working like 14 hours a day. So anyhow, enough of that. Let's get on with the tutorial. What I want to show you in this video is creating a Web 2.0 button. And the whole thing about Web 2.0 today, the graphics, is shine, reflection, that kind of thing. So the way that we're going to do this, I'll just go to File and New here. The way that we're going to do it is I'm going to make this in such a fashion that you could integrate this into other, like if you're working on a website or something, you can pull this in real easy. So we're going to make a button that's approximately, let's do 125 by, we'll just do, maybe start with 75 for right now. We'll go ahead and leave the resolution at 72 dpi. We want transparent. And okay. There we go. Now what I want to do is first create the base of the button. That's the general shape of it. And let me show you a little trick to get that accomplished. I'm going to select my elliptical marquee tool. And I'm going to do a little click and drag, but I'm going to hold the shift key down. And that constrains the proportions. And if you have to adjust things and move the selection around once you've started drawing it, just press and hold the space bar and that lets you move it around. And you have to be ambidextrous to be able to do that because you're holding several keys down at once. I'm going to go with, well, actually we need to stay away from the edges a bit for shadows and stuff. So we'll go with something about like that right there. And all I'm going to do is, at this point, you can fill it with any color because we're actually going to be changing that quite a bit. But we'll go ahead and pick a color that's going to be similar to what we're going to be using. Alt backspace, Option Delete for you Mac users, and Control Command D to deselect that. Now, we grab the rectangular marquee tool, and we're just going to cut this in half. Something about like that right there. Control Shift J, that would be Command Shift J on the Mac. What that does is cut that off to another layer. How about that? Makes a copy of it. And then we're just going to grab the Move tool with the letter V. And we'll slide that over here. And now all we do is grab the marquee tool again and go point to point like that and fill it with the same color. Control Command D again. Okay, that is the base. Now I mentioned to you that the color doesn't really matter. That's because we're gonna, I like flexibility, I like dynamic, I like to be able to change things. So I'm gonna change the color, but I selected this so that you can just, kind of see things. First, though, what we need to do is merge this down because see right now, that's what we've got, right? So with the top layer selected, Control E, Command E. And the reason that they chose the letter E for that is because merge ends in E, right? Not, I doubt that's the reason. I don't know why they did that. But so now that's what we've got right there. So what we want to do is let's just do a little old FX. And you can't see this, it's off your screen, but I'm going to select Color Overlay. And here is where we will pick the actual color. And again, the reason that I do it this way is because then I've got that dynamic flexibility, where I can change things. Now, one thing with this, that in fact, now, that is pretty much where we're at right now. And I don't really know why I closed that because we're going to totally go back in there. But here's what the button looks like so far. Let's double click there. And you want to make sure you check out the blending options, the main dialog here. Because we want to blend things, we want to blend the interior effects as a group. And by default, that is not turned on. Then we're going to take the fill opacity and we're going to bring it down, maybe somewhere around 70. If I can get there, there we go, 70%. And let's go ahead and start turning stuff on. When you click on these, by the way, it's best to click on the name because that turns it on and moves you there. So you've got the options. For my angle, I'm going to go with 90 degrees. I'm also going to bring down the opacity for this just a bit. I don't want it to be like super overpowering or anything like that. And as a matter of fact, it's a good idea on something that's supposed to be translucent like this. You want to not use black as your shadow, but in fact, use a darker blue. Right? It's kind of a subtle thing, but it really does add to the effect. So let's change. A lot of this kind of stuff is going to depend entirely on the size that you're creating your button. But that actually right about there. That's probably as good as I'm going to need. Let's go ahead and move on to inner shadow. And I want to try to get this. You know what? I tell you what, so I can see more. Well, I'll just deal with it here. 90 degrees should be for the angle because if you're using the global light, then it'll just, all of these things kind of synchronize with each other. Same thing here, though. You don't want necessarily black. You want just kind of a dark blue. And again, this all is going to depend on what size the button is. But what we're looking for is something that just looks kind of like that. Okay. Let's do an inner glow. We're going to change this because by default, the glow is supposed to be like a bright color, right? But we're not going to do that. We're going to go to multiply, and we're going to change the color to our ever-present dark blue. And that way we're getting kind of multiple shading from different directions, which is going to just enhance the three-dimensional aspect here. Bring the opacity down a little bit. And then everything else, we can leave that to the default. Now we need to add some highlights, and we're going to do that with good old bevel and emboss. Only here, the default options are kind of lame. So what we're going to do